Call this meeting of Lima City Council to order. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise. Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening to do the business of the city of Lima. We ask for your guidance of our minds and our hearts, especially during this Christmas season where we're just a few days from celebrating the birth of our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
This evening also, we have 5 students from Bath High School who are here in attendance. Jajia Wheeler, Alyssa Lee, Heather Horton, Casey Bott, and Noah Young. And we'll ask them to lead us off with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will make a motion to appoint Law Director Anthony Geiger as council clerk.
Second.
Motion second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. First up is a scheduled public hearing regarding the vacation of a portion of Boyer Street petitioned for by Amazing Clark LLC and RKDJ Petroleum. And we will, is there a formal call we need to? I'll have the clerk read the call.
Notice is hereby given that on the 22nd day of December 2014 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers located at 50 Town Square, Lima, Ohio, a public hearing will be held on the following matter. Vacation of a portion of Boyer Street that runs north and south between Flanders Avenue and Findlay Road. The purpose is to combine the street with the adjacent parcels to the east and west for economic development of the adjacent parcels. This proposal is initiated by Mike Flynn on behalf of Amazing Clark LLC and RKDJ Petroleum LLC, owners of the abutting properties located in the city of Lima, Ohio, and has been recommended and approved by the City Planning Commission. Any interested person or persons desiring to be heard on said matter may do so at the time and place specified previously. The reports, maps, and other documents pertaining to the above requests are on file in the office of the Clerk of Council and are open to public inspection.
We will open the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to the issue of vacating Boyer Street? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Michael Stuber. I'm at 6830 Faulkner Road in Westminster.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed to businesses thriving in this area. Matter of fact, I used to be in business myself. But I do have an issue if there's an ethical or a legal problem. Now, these particular petitioners own Marathon right down the street on the corner of Sugar Street and Findlay Road 2. And I was a victim of bait and switch. They had the advertised gasoline price on the marquee at one price, but when I got done pumping it, I realized it was 3 cents higher on the pump. So I went in, because that was all prepaid. I went in and I said, the pump price is different than what's on your marquee. And I showed it. He says, I must have changed the sign, but then I got busy cleaning and mopping and must have forgot it. Well, I don't know how long ago that had been, so I don't know how many customers was in there, prepaid, and got ripped off. Now, I didn't spend a lot of money there. It was only $5, but it's the principal. Okay? Now, not only that, but so I stayed there. And of course, they have cameras in the store, so if you need to verify it, you can probably get the tape unless they destroyed it. But I don't think they did because of what I'm going to present to you this evening. Anyways, I asked the guy, I said, well, I said, there should be a price difference. It's 3 cents difference, you know, whatever. And so he hauled around. He said, well, I can't do anything about it. You have to leave. Oh, really? Well, so I did. But I went down to the clerk, because I know the same people own that station too. And I confronted them down there about what happened to this other store. They said, well, of course, none of the owners was there. They hired help. It was there. They said, well, the same company owns both businesses. But what you want to do is you want to go in the morning and talk to Mike at Marathon. So I went there in the morning. I never got to see Mike. Matter of fact, when I walked in and I explained why I was there, I asked if Mike was there. They said, "You must be the guy that was complaining about the price of our gas." I said, "Well, yeah, it was on the marquee at one price, and on the pump at a different price. It's illegal. Bait and switch is totally illegal." And he says, "Well, Mike's not here, but Tony," and I know his last name is Newland, Tony Newland, he says, "he asked me to give this to you, and I made a copy of it, and can I approach?"
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any questions? Look at it.
Well, here, we'll pass it around. We'll give it back to you in a minute.
Okay. Now, what you're looking at is a copy of the note, and actually, if you look at both of those tickets, it's a duplicate receipt, because I always get receipts from all purchases. I mean, that's where I can keep track where I've been and what time I was there. But by not being able to speak to somebody in the management, and in the morning, I mean, they never offered an apology. And when I went back there to see Mike, I had to drive 20 miles round trip. Now, 20 miles round trip is worth more than the 5.5 cents there that is attached in coin. Jesus. Now, I'm sure everyone is aware that it's against federal law to deface coin and currency. And by cutting that penny in half and taping it to a receipt as a refund, not only was it an attitude, but it was also illegal.
Mr. Stuber, I'm going to ask you to focus on the issue is regarding the vacation of Boyer Street between Flanders Avenue and Finley Road. What is your direct opinion on that?
Okay, I'm totally against it, and there's several reasons I'm against it. Number one is if a company is going to continue to offer employment to people who break the law, and I don't know if you have taken into consideration, but there are like sewers, maybe water lines under that street, and there are people that use that street all the time. I'm one person who actually uses that street because United Telephone or UTelco credit union used to be there on the other side. Now, I have no objection to them having an office there, but it would be more along the order of where Tom Mall had petitioned for King Road to be closed so he could expand his business, but they voted it down because they said traffic needs to get through there. So I'm totally against it for those reasons.
All right. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to the issue of the vacation of a portion of Boyer Street between Flanders Avenue and Finley Road? So please come forward and state your name and address.
Yeah, I'm Mike Flynn, 2260 Oakland Parkway, Lima, Ohio. I'm here as a representative of Amazing Clark. I am not the Mike he was referring to earlier. I have nothing to do with their day-to-day operations. I'm a contractor and just helping to try to get this street vacated so that we can build a new building there. It's going to improve traffic flow in and out of their facility, along with expanding the convenience store for the immediate community around there. The store does a very good business with a very limited amount of space that it has now. So I know that there were a couple stipulations that we had to have a bond, which I'm not able to present tonight, but I could have it for the next meeting. So if this has to go to a second reading or whatever, that I'd be fine with that. But it's been quite an odyssey traveled to get the street vacated, and I think we're finally just about there. And I appreciate all the people that have helped me along the way. But I guess that's all I've got to say about it. It's going to be a nice building, and it should be an asset to the community and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of the vacation of a portion of Boyer Street between Flanders and Finley Road? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Moving on to the consent calendar.
We have privilege.
Oh,
We can take
sorry.
one pass it on.
Sally's not here. She normally keeps me in the line. We do have privilege of the floor. Mr. Henry Houston regarding policing. Mr. Houston, if you'd come forward, state your name and address for the record. And rules of council allow for 3 minutes.
Well, my name is Henry Houston. I live at 626 West Elm Street.
All right, thank you.
And being that my time is limited, I'm just going to tackle just one complaint that I had at a time. And I'm going to start with the one that you got before you. There was a complaint against Officer Brotherwood. And the whole point is to show that the system as it is unjust, and it therefore doesn't allow an individual to receive any kind of justice in the court system. Now, on that complaint, Brotherwood charged me with speeding at 40 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And he charged me with not wearing a seatbelt, and he charged me with no insurance. So when I went to court, I pleaded not guilty, and the video that was on the cruiser showed that I wasn't speeding and that I had my seatbelt on, and that he didn't even ask for proof of insurance, but he put that on my citation, that I didn't have any insurance. So once the video verified the fact that I wasn't speeding, I looked at my odometer, it said 27 miles an hour. He charged me with 40 miles an hour. I pleaded not guilty, went to court, had a counsel with Bill Klug, and they strung it out for almost 4 months for the sole purpose of not putting this young kid on the stand and embarrassing him. So anyway, when we got to court on the third time, the prosecutor asked Klug to step outside. He went outside with Klug and came back in and said they're going to drop the speeding charge if I plead guilty to a seatbelt violation. Well, quite naturally, if they're going to drop the speeding charge, the seatbelt violation should have been non-void, and I shouldn't have been charged in the first doggone place. Well, anyway, Klug went ahead and told Warner that we were going to plead guilty to a seatbelt violation without my consent. Warner went ahead and put that in, and I was found guilty of a seatbelt violation, and I was charged court costs and for the seatbelt violation. My whole point is that there's no accountability for officers fabricating citations out there on the street and making up any kind of lie that they want to, and they're not held accountable. Now, for me personally, I had to go through hiring counsel. I had to go through the Citizens Review Board. And all of this just to prove that I was innocent of something that I never did. But yet, an officer can just tell a white lie like that, and then I can have to go through all of these changes to try to prove my innocence. And at the same time, I still was found guilty. So where's the justice in that? That's just one side complaint that I filed. So anytime you go before Judge Warner, he's always, even if you file a, not guilty, put in a not guilty plea, and he hears all of the testimony, he knows that your explanation of the situation has merit and that it sounds pretty good, he still rules in behalf of the officer because he says it's the officer's word against yours. So all I'm telling you is this. The system is flawed. We can do better than this. And if it wasn't for the money that the city was extracting from the African American community with these illegal stops and all of these fabricated tickets, the whole point of this whole matter is to take money out of the pockets of poor people, especially African American people. There's no check and balances in it. I got a letter from the police department saying that Officer Brotherwood made a good faith stop. And when you got the police department backing a lying officer up, and you got the justice system with Judge Warner going along with the officer, what right does an individual have, a taxpaying, law-abiding citizen have? He has no avenues whatsoever. The system is rigged. You can't get justice in that kind of system. So something's got to be done about it. And as you see nationwide, you see what all this uproar is about, a flawed system and the way people have been treated for decades. And now that festering wound is coming to the surface. And so you're going to have to deal with it not only here, but it's going to have to be dealt with nationwide. So I don't know, if it wasn't for all of the money that's being extracted from these illegal stops and these fictitious citations, they wouldn't be doing all of this. It's all about money. Getting money by getting you in the court system, $100 and something court fine, and then also the fabricated citation that you get, you got to pay that fine as well. So I don't know what you can do about it. You got the mayor here. He's not going to change the policy because all of the revenue is generated.
Okay. You've gone over your 3 minutes, so can you wrap it up, please?
Oh, well, in closing, I just like to say that I consider myself a Christian person, and Scripture tells us to turn the other cheek, and I think I turned mine so many times I can't count. So you can take a pet dog and kick it around long enough and it'll turn around and bite you. So I'm just saying that you got to do something about this system and give people, especially poor people, a fair shake.
Thank you.
All righty.
Moving on to the consent calendar.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that item A of the consent calendar be received, filed, and approved, and item B be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve item A and to receive and file item B. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 1.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to enter into contract with MWH.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that communication number 1 be received and filed, and that the law director be authorized to prepare any necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 1 and to authorize the law director to prepare any necessary legislation. Is there any discussion?
Mr.
I'll
President,
just note that, I'm sorry, I was going to note that the mayor has already authorized the legislation.
actually, we did the legislation last meeting.
Okay?
Good. Disregard the
We can
the
just-
need for you
No,
then.
That's right.
He just doesn't have to authorize anything. Motion, the second, is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion, those opposed, the motion carries. Communication number 2.
From the mayor regarding merit increases.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 2 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 2. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I just want to get it clear, because I had a lot of folks that asked me questions about rehirees, and I discussed it with the mayor, and the mayor said rehirees does not receive the merit increase.
President, that's not what I said.
Okay, I didn't catch it then. I thought you said that then. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I clarified that the chiefs of police and fire
Okay.
do not receive it.
I'm sorry about that then. Okay.
All
I
right.
thought,
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
opposed.
Let me call the roll.
Please.
We'll do a roll call on this vote. Mr. Nixon?
I want to clarify something. This is simply receive and file. Yes. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
No.
And Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-3. Communication number 2 is received and filed. Communication number 3.
From the mayor regarding the mayor's budget estimate for 2015.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 3 be received, filed, and referred to the City Council Finance Committee.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 3 and to refer to the city's finance committee, council's finance committee. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 4.
From the finance director regarding legislation for the temporary appropriations.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 4 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 4. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 5.
From the finance director regarding legislation for budget amendments.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 5 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 5. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 6.
From the finance director regarding legislation for 2014 budget cash advances.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 6 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 6. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 7.
From the finance director regarding legislation for 2014 budget cash transfers.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 7 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 7. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 8.
From the HR director regarding employee diversity.
Mr. President.
Mr. Glenn?
Oh, that's not me. That's you,
No,
Jesse.
you got it.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, Jesse. I move that communication number 8, receive and file.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to receive and file communication number 8. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Lowe?
Mr. Glenn.
What's that?
I said, I'm Mr. Glenn.
Yeah. No. No.
I want everyone to know that on this communication, I had went and asked Mr. Vince Ozer, who's in charge of the HR department, to show the employee diversity within the city. For those that don't know, I'm a cosmetologist, and I have the opportunity to speak with a lot of individuals all the time from different walks of life. And, you know, sometimes with what's going on in the nation and media, and everybody started asking a lot of questions. And I couldn't give them an answer. I couldn't give them an honest answer. I knew what I thought the percentage was. But we're at about 6.8% if you take away the part-time and the seasonal help. If you add both of them together, for those watching, we're at 408 employees, full and part-time for the city, and 30 are of, well, let me take that back, 36, 37, 38 are minorities out of 408. So what I would do at this time is not harp on what is now, but again, I'm going to issue the same challenge I did last week. Last council. Individuals need to get out and get busy and apply for these jobs. You can't get hired if you don't apply. And in the meeting that we had earlier, you know, Mr. Glenn stated, and I've heard it also, that when I apply for the job, I'm not going to get it anyway. Well, excuse. Take the test. We have rules in order to make sure that everyone gets a fair shake. What happened in 1972 is not what's happened in 2014. A lot of individuals said, well, my mom tried this or my dad tried this and they didn't get it. That was them. I'm asking you to take the test. I know for a fact that communications had been requested from some of the area churches. I know he sends them out because our church announces it all the time. And not only do they announce it, I announce it, and I have made posts on Facebook on several occasions. So I know the word is out there, but we need to stand up and place ourselves in a position to get some of these jobs, and this number will change. And instead of talking, I think we need to start walking a little bit better than what we're doing, and put yourself in a position to be the one individual to make the change. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I just got a couple things to say about this, and this is very, very important. And like Mr. Lowe has said, we do have a low minority hiring here in the city of Lima. And I always say it every year, it's like a busted chainsaw. We got to do this, guys. I understand, I hear the story all the time. But I think we got a lot of good things here now that if any of that stuff happened, it's not going to happen now. Your motivation got to come back. Because I know folks I talk to, we got a job open. I've been hitting the floor running, trying to get people involved in it. Take the test. Let's just take the test. These are good paying retirement jobs. We want our kids to stay at home. They shouldn't have to leave and go out of town to go to work. This is home. So let's work on it. Let's get these in. I know a lot of churches getting sent out. Vince, get them out to folks, all the churches, newspaper. You know, some people say I don't read the newspaper. Some said about Derry Glenn, you call me about it, so I know you read the newspaper. But the thing about it, let's take care of business on this. And I want to see, I'm going to try to evaluate this 6 months and see where we at. You know, it should have been different. You know, and we don't want to hear it. We're going to be moving forward. Let's move forward and try. Everybody in here should let their family member know we got a construction job open, and a lot more jobs will be open. In the future, going to be a lot of retirees, a lot of openings. Let's get on the ball and get these good paying jobs. Okay, very good paying jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Mrs. Miles?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have the same concerns with these numbers here. Even before this study was put out, I know our numbers were really, really low. 7.4% is extremely low for a community where the African-American population is 27, 28% of the city. I talked to Mr. Vince about the what can we do going forward here, because apparently what we're doing currently is not working. I believe that there's myths out there. I believe there's perceptions out there that why try when I'm not going to get hired? And there's a lot of things that people are thinking, and that type of thinking kind of bleeds into the community, and everybody hears it and they believe it. And so I would like to see some type of initiative in 2015 by our administration to maybe set up a committee here and let us go out there and see what's going on. What are the roadblocks? What are the deterrents from individuals coming and applying for jobs? Evidently, it's going to take more than just say, hey, look in the paper and look on the city website and apply for jobs, because apparently that's not working. And so we've got to do a deeper dive into what's going on in our community to make people think that there is no possibility of them working for the city of Lima. And so I'm asking the administration, I'm asking our mayor for one of our goals for 2015. Let's set that as a goal. Let's set it as something that we want to accomplish or work on for the new year, because what is being done and what is happening right now, I believe unless we do something differently, we're going to have the same issue again when we look at these numbers here for 2015. I think we should set a goal as a council, as an administration, to at least have close to 10%. I don't believe 10% is asking for a lot from our minority population to be employed in the city. And as we get people to work in our city, we will be able to know some of the concerns. Because right now, if you have a population of workers and where everybody looks alike, everybody goes to the same places, you're not going to know exactly what the issues are in our city. In order for us to be a representation of our city and to know the needs, we need to have a good, diverse group of people who are in all walks of life in our community. And I don't think that's happening right now. And so, again, I would like to challenge our administration, challenge us as councilors. What can we do differently in 2015 that these numbers will change going forward?
All right. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Absolutely.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Communication number 9.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place tax assessments.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move to communication number 9, receive and file legislation on night agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 9. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Communication number 10.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place tax assessment for specified parcels.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn.
I move to communication number 10, receive and file legislation on night agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 10. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 11.
From the Director of Public Works requesting legislation to amend the contract with Miller Cable Company.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 11 be received and filed, and the law director be authorized to prepare the necessary legislation to comply with the request.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 11 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 12.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to enter into contract with gas, plumbing, and heating.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that communication number 12 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 12. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 13.
From the Law Director regarding ordinance 302-14.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin.
I move that communication number 13 be received and filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 13. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Communication number 14.
From the Law Director regarding the number of ordinances.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Miles.
I move that communication number 14 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 14. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have reports of officials. Sergeant Andy Green, LPD, regarding social media.
Good evening. I was asked to come and address council and talk a little bit about the social media program that we have over at the police department. I just want to start out by saying it's going pretty well. We've been really busy with it, and we're looking to grow the program throughout the next coming year. We launched in 2012, November of 2012. We started with just Facebook. And we followed after that with Twitter, and now we've got all kinds of stuff going on that you'll be able to see as soon as you get your handout in front of you. So on the second page of your handout, you'll see that these are the current platforms that we're operating on with social media. Currently, our main two are Facebook and Twitter. With Facebook, we currently have 15,887 followers. With Twitter, behind with 4,608 followers as of right before I came into this meeting. But we are also using Pinterest, Instagram. Both of those we're using to post photos, and what we like to do with those is we're looking for positive stories that we can share with the public about what's going on at the police department. The news media picks up on a lot of what we do, but some of it is just maybe not something that would be newsworthy, but we think it's important for the public to hear what we're doing on a daily basis. So I look around for a lot of positive things that we're doing and try to share those. Both of our Pinterest and Instagram feeds are linked to our Facebook page. So if you're not a member of either one of those, you can see them on Facebook. Another one we use is Nixle. That's an emergency text alert system. That's a free system to us. It's used to send out text and email alerts to people who are subscribed. If anybody wanted to subscribe to that and is not currently subscribed, all you have to do is text the word Lima Police to 888-777. Another thing we use is YouTube. We post videos on there. We use Blogger, which is a blog where we will post longer posts and then link to them. So we have a lot going on, a lot of different platforms that we're using. The next page you'll see is the trend of Facebook followers that we have. On Facebook, they call them likes. You can see that it's a steady increase over the last month. Again, we're right at 15,800. On the right-hand side, you'll see that just this week, we've reached 76,477 people. That's within the past 7 days with just the posts that we've done. The next page we have, this shows the followers that we have on Facebook, and it breaks them down by demographic. And I use this tool to be able to make sure that we're reaching the audience that we want to reach. Currently, our most active users that follow us on Facebook are women between the age of 25 and 34 years old. So that's important for us to know. So that tells us who we're reaching. If I were to look at this and see that our followers were primarily children, I would see that we probably need to change our message and be able to reach the audience that we're looking for. The next one you'll see is where we're reaching. Well, I think it's really important to grow our follower base, and you'll see some agencies across the country that have huge numbers of people who follow them. We're not up there quite that high yet. However, with our ranking, it's important to let you know that we are currently number 9 in the nation for Facebook followers for a police agency our size. But if you see that Lima, Ohio ranks at the top of our followers with our people that we've reached, not followers, but over 20,000. If we were reaching other communities before ours, it wouldn't be a good thing. So we're reaching the audience that we want to reach. I just wanted to go over a couple of posts that we've put out there. Back in September, you remember we had the prison escape. And we put a post out there. It immediately became very popular. We were followed, the Lima Police Department was followed for information about that. We gathered all the information we released from the State Highway Patrol, who was pushing it out, and then we retweeted it and reshared it. And our goal was to inform the public of what was going on and also of the potential dangers, and also to seek any tips we were able to be able to locate them. The next page shows how our followers grew during that time. Within just a few short hours, we doubled our Facebook followers and got up to around 14,000 just in that one night. That first post that I showed you, that showed the photos of the two escapees, that post reached 1.1 million people overnight. They weren't just from Lima, obviously. We reached people in the Chardon, Ohio area, which is where that original crime took place. This was important to them. They were looking to our Facebook page to gather information. It also reached worldwide. I was contacted that night by news agencies from across the country as well as around the world. The next one shows trending topics on Twitter that happened that night. You see the top 3 trends were TJ Lane, Chardon, and Lima. And that was in the Cleveland, Ohio area. The next page shows just an idea of the type of post we put out there. This is the top post we had in the last 3 months. It was a 10-second video. It was of the warehouse fire in October. It was shot from the roof of the police department. It reached 94,000 people in just a few hours. We like to use our Facebook, Twitter feeds, and all the other things we do. We try to identify people that are suspected of crimes. This post that you have in front of you was a video that we posted about the Fat Jacks robbery. That was this month. You can see that it was viewed by 35,000 people. It's good. It's good to put that kind of stuff out there, video and pictures. It draws a lot of attention, and our hope is to be able to identify them. At this time, we've still not identified them, but that video is still out there. The next one with these bicycles is a good story that I wanted to share. And back on August the 2nd, the photos that you see on the left of that bicycle and trailer were sent to us by a citizen who had that bicycle and trailer stolen. It was stolen from their front porch. It belonged to her and their autistic child. They were very upset. They wanted the bike back. They sent us pictures. I posted it to our Facebook page. It got a lot of attention. The next day, on August the 3rd, a citizen of Lima contacted us and asked us to put him in contact with the victim, and he ended up donating a bicycle to the family. We took it out there for him and gave it to him, but he donated it. Then a few weeks later, because of the photos that were posted on Facebook, we were able to recover the actual bike and trailer in the same condition that it was stolen, and that was also given back to the family. The next couple of pictures that I have on there are just some positive stories that we've shared recently. The first one is of an officer changing a tire for a citizen. It's not something that you would see on WLIO, but it's something that's important for us to put out there because it shows that our officers will do more than go out and write citations and make arrests. They do care about the community. The officer that did this happens to be standing in the back of the room right now, so you can give him a hard time if you want to. The next one is a photo that was taken at our Coffee with a Cop event, and it shows these are two ACSO deputies on horseback going through the drive-thru at McDonald's. So it's a positive thing that shows, and it just shows kind of the lighter side of law enforcement. And then the last photo I have for you is of Major Baker with a child, also at that same Coffee with a Cop event. And again, the purpose of this type of thing is just to show the human side of the police department, show a lighter side of the police department. That is all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Mr. President.
Mr. Lowe.
I appreciate this. I do have one question. This is not to sound negative, but this is to let individuals at home know what would happen. What happens when you get false information from an individual that says this is going on here and they're constantly posting? Do you get that?
We get a lot of tips, mainly through private message, And some of those we have not been able to corroborate, but we do take all information that we receive and we attempt to verify it. So I'm not sure exactly what type of situations you're saying, but we've had, we get a lot of drug complaints. We get complaints of vehicles that have been parked for weeks at a time. But what we do is we try to verify all of that information. We don't act just on the tip alone. We try to verify it also.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Thanks, sir. Reports of committees, Finance Committee, Mr. Tevin?
Yes, Mr. President, there were 2 Finance Committee meetings, and each council member has received a copy of the minutes. The abbreviated version of what took place. We discussed the same 2 items in each meeting. One was the city's purchasing policy, and specifically the notification of council members when contracts for temporary help fall below the threshold that is specified in the purchasing policy. We were looking for a way for that to be communicated to council, and the auditor has added that to the monthly report that he provides to us on that subject. He added a column that shows the ordinance number, and if there is a position that doesn't require an ordinance or council action, he will shade it in, and the ordinance, the cell where the ordinance number would be will be blank. So the committee was satisfied with that. The second item was the pay increase and benefits of mayoral appointees. And the discussion, this was referred to the committee after the committee had made changes to the pay increases for all elected officials that tied those increases to the consumer price index rather than a fixed percentage increase each year. And we mirrored what we did with the elected officials in that it is based upon the consumer price index through October 30th of the previous year, and it is capped at 3%. So we're protected from high inflation, granting raises that we can't afford, but it also does not grant an increase in years where there is low inflation or no inflation. There would be no increases, cost of living increases granted. Legislation was authorized in the second meeting that appears on our agenda this evening dealing with that, and I move that these 2 reports be received, filed, and approved.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve both committee reports as submitted by Councilor Tevin. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Ordinance 291-14.
Levying special assessments for property maintenance code charges on premises in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I move that ordinance 291-14 be passed in its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 291-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 291-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 292-14.
Levying special assessments for property maintenance code charges on premises in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. Glenn?
I move that ordinance 292-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 292-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 292-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 293-14.
Amending the 2014 annual budget.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 293-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 293-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 293-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 294-14.
Making preliminary appropriations for current and ordinary expenses of the city of Lima, Ohio for the period beginning January 1st, 2015 until the annual appropriation ordinance of the city of Lima, Ohio is in force.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 294-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 294-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 294-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 295-14.
Authorizing the transfer of cash between certain funds as herein described.
Mr.
Mr.
President,
Tevin?
I move that ordinance 295-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 295-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'm going to discuss something. I have a choice. Either suck on this cough drop and try to talk, and I apologize if I don't enunciate properly, or cough.
Or you get choked.
So we're going to go with the cough drop, and I apologize if you can't understand what I'm saying, all right? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 295-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 296-14.
Authorizing cash advances from the general fund to certain other funds and for reimbursement back to the general fund.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 296-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 296-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 296-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 297-14.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Clemens Nelson and Associates.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Miles?
I'd like to make an amendment to Section 1 of this ordinance to state not to exceed $63,000.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to amend ordinance 297-14 in section 1 by adding a comma and the words not to exceed $63,000. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Mrs. Miles. Now you have to move the ordinance as amended.
I move that the ordinance as amended be adopted, passed.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 297-14 on its first reading as amended. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
No.
And Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 297-14 has received 5 affirmative votes, 3 against. It will go to second reading. Ordinance 298-14.
Amending ordinance 70-14.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Miles?
I move that amendment be made on this particular ordinance in Section 1 again to state that the dollar amount is not to exceed an additional $5,000.
Second.
Motion, the second, is to amend ordinance 298-14 under section 1 by adding a comma and the words not to exceed an additional $5,000. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Mrs. Miles.
I motion that be passed with the as amended.
Second.
Motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 298-14 on its first reading as amended. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
No.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
No.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 298-14, there's 5 affirmative votes, 3 against. It will go to second reading. Ordinance 299-14.
Authorizing the mayor to give consent to the Ohio Department of Transportation to replace the bridge deck on the Collett Street Bridge over the Ottawa River.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that ordinance 299-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 299-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
is it possible that, is there a time period on this that we could see this work being done? Will it be done during the winter?
Mr. Elstro?
This work is being done in conjunction with the Ohio Department of Transportation and the County Engineer's Office. It will commence approximately July 9th. And it'll probably proceed throughout the fall. I don't have a complete termination date for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elstro. Any further? Any further discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 299-14 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 314.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with gas, plumbing, and heating.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams?
I move that ordinance 300-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion of the second is to pass ordinance 314 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 314 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 301-14.
Amending section 1040.26 of the codified ordinances of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
I move that ordinance 301.14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion of the second is to pass ordinance 301-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President?
Mr. McLean?
Just for clarification for those out there in the audience, this is basically reducing that fee, late fee on your water bills. We had it at $20. We're moving it down to $10 because it was restricting some people that were outside the city limits. It's just a water bill that their late fee was more than their actual bill was. So we accommodated. It's going to be now either a $10 late fee or 10% of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Is there any further discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
No.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes?
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 301-14 has been passed on its first reading by a 7-1 vote. Ordinance 302-14.
Amending the salary for mayoral administrative employees.
Mr. President,
Mr. Tevin?
I move that ordinance 302-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion of the second is to pass ordinance 302-14 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
No.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
No.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 302-14 has been passed on its first reading by a 6-2 vote. Ordinance 303-14.
Establishing the positions and classifications hereinafter set forth and fixing the salary and compensation of such positions and classifications, repealing inconsistent ordinances as described herein.
I am so sorry. Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe.
I move that ordinance 303-14 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 30314 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Nixon?
Yes?
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes.
Mr. Tevin?
Yes.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
Yes.
Ordinance 30314 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 30414.
Vacating a portion of Boyer Street.
Mr. President,
Mr. Lowe?
I move that 30414 be passed, be placed on second reading.
Second.
Motion and the second is to place ordinance 30414 on second reading. Is there any discussion? Just by way of explanation, as Mr. Flynn alluded to in his comments during the public hearing, there are some documents that we're still waiting on that have, on the advice of the law director, he's advised us to put this on second reading so we can get those straightened out. And it will be on second reading at our January 5th meeting. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Miscellaneous business, Mr. Gordon.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for a good first year of being on council. Thank everybody in the administration, and thank all of you for all your assistance. It's much appreciated. I want to thank Chief Martin for meeting with me. We discussed some issues with community relations, some that might have been discussed tonight. And also thank Mr. Glenn for his bringing the folks in from Dayton. I thought that was very informative and very interesting, and I'd like to see us, somewhere head in the right direction. I think it's important that we don't have these issues coming up in our town. So therefore, again, I want to thank both the chief and Mr. Glenn for having discussions with me. On Cable Road, a week or so ago, there was an accident, and I just want to remember the Steeman family, where they lost their father, their husband, their son, and for me, I lost one of my best friends. Mr. Steeman was injured as a pedestrian, killed as a pedestrian, and so again, I just want to remember those folks. On a happier note, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I also want to remind people to be good to each other. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to echo a little bit about Councilor Gordon brought about Merry Christmas. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and hope everyone has a very prosperous New Year. We won't meet until after the New Year, so everybody be safe, be careful, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Mr. Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. You can make mine merrier if you want to donate any gifts to me. I'm available at any time. The other thing, a couple other things I'd like to say is,
Santa's watching.
I hope he is.
You know that.
One of the things I would like to say is, we have some property that the city owns. We have individuals that have been renting for these properties, for very low price. Part of the lease is that they communicate with council. We are ambassadors of the city. When individuals move to the city and want to know how they can get involved with different things, one of the programs that we introduce to them is the neighborhood associations. We were promised as council that a report would come back to us that first week in October, because it's an automatic renewal. We just want to know what you've done. And I don't think we're asking for too much. I think we've been more than patient. I hear there's been some changes going on over there. But at the end of the day, it's been 3 months. And you want our respect, and we also want your respect. and we ask that you please come with some kind of report. Mr. Gordon, he gave us a verbal report that was satisfactory to everyone. We're asking that LACNIP step up and just do what you promised you was going to do. A couple items came up this week when talking to people, and one of them was the docket that we received prior to council. The question came up, why can't that be placed on the city website at least by 5 o'clock on Friday evening? If those that would like to look at the docket, who have questions, can contact us and call us so they can get a better understanding and read through things. I don't have an answer. I did ask our secretary to ask Mr. Worse. I did not get an answer back yet. But I'm hoping that that can be done. And I'm saying it publicly because I think a lot of people, they sit at home and they hear us pass ordinances and they have no clue what we're passing unless one of us speak up and kind of speak on it a little more in depth. I think we owe that to our taxpayers. I think they should know exactly what's being done and who is being done for, to, with, or against. So if we can do that, I would like to see that done. The issue of the gas station came up again on Boyer Road. I've talked with about 14, 15 individuals in that area. Their main concern really wasn't the street being blocked, but the expansion that he is requesting. They don't want to see more of the same product that's being sold in this gas station. There's glass pipes being sold, any flavor blunt that you would like to purchase, and there's some other things that's being sold. It's just not a good look, especially coming in off of that 81, and that might be the first gas station or second gas station you stop at. It's not a good look for the city when you walk in the door and the first thing you see is glass smoking pipes and hookah machines. It's horrible, okay? And they don't want to see more of that. And if you make a bigger place, you're going to bring more inventory. And that was their main concern. The other thing that I would like to say is that I want to thank every resident of this city, but especially the individuals of Third Ward for granting me the privilege to serve you. Again, this year was the first year of my next 4 years. So either I'm doing something right or nobody cared, but I like to think that the first was it. So I appreciate, I had a gentleman that I met in the mall. I hadn't met him. He is in my ward. I hadn't met him. And you know, you hear a lot of negative things, as some of the other councilors probably do. But sometimes that one person will say something and you're like, man, somebody's really listening, and it just wipes away all that negativity. So I want to thank him for his comments that he made to me, him and his wife. And again, I just want to thank Third Ward and the citizens of Lima for the privilege to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Mr. Tevin.
A couple of things. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a safe Christmas. My wife and I are very fortunate that all of our kids will be home for Christmas this year. Our oldest grandson, Anthony, showed up from Chicago late this afternoon, just before the council meeting, and there's two elves that came with him, the elf on the shelf, Annie and Kevin. They've taken up residence at our house, and I'm sure they'll be moving around and keeping an eye on things. But Anthony and I have a very important basketball game we're going to play probably Christmas Eve. It's a championship game, and he told me he's going to crush me. So
I guess.
I told him I was going to win by 1 point. One thing I would encourage everyone to do, there are many opportunities within our community all year long, but especially this time of year, to help out charitable organizations that help others. And I would encourage everyone just to pick one and do what you can for them. It doesn't have to be something huge, but if everyone gives a little, it will help a lot of people in our community. And again, Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tevin. Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Would like to thank the residents and the citizens of Lima, and the residents of the 5th Ward, and the 2 neighborhood associations that we currently have in the ward. A great group of people, communication. I've enjoyed the years that I've served and look forward to the years going forward. And I would also like to make mention, or as a reminder, to the Public Works Committee, which I chair, there's one issue in the Public Works Committee that we'll be looking at hopefully early next year. Chapter 1409 of the Codified Ordinance. It's a special building criteria within the Design Review District. Borders and boundaries, we're looking at those, and also council approval of appointees and disapproval. Just as a reminder for those that serve with me on the committee, and I would also like this opportunity to thank Councilor Tebben for the late refers to your Finance Committee, and for acting on those and holding the meetings and the discussions that we passed the legislation this evening for next year. And I appreciate your efforts, and Councilor Miles for her input on those meetings as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Mr. Glenn?
I got a little bit to talk about, just a few minutes. First of all, I want to thank all the folks that helped out with the annual Christmas dinner for the people in the 6th Ward. It was great. We brought it to the Lima Towers, and it's very exciting when you give the folks that need things. Also, we will be giving toys out to kids tomorrow. I know folks always say, but I get that good feeling about just to continue helping folks. And I appreciate the people in 6th Ward all the time, because my work has never stopped. It's running 7 days a week. And I'm excited about it all the time, and reaching out to everyone. And they don't have to be in my ward. I'm still reaching out to them, because we all live in this city together. You know, we all just one here. And it's a lot of things this whole year. I got to look at the whole year, what some of the things we have to do. And I appreciate Lieutenant Booker and Michelle come down here to talk about what can we do. The law director came. We had some folks from the county came. So I appreciate them showing up, because we're trying to fix the problems. You know, could these problems be fixed overnight? I had calls Saturday night. I had to get out the house because people getting stopped. You know, they was calling me about that, and it's always different. Some folks say, "Why are you doing that?" You know, you're a city, but being a city councilman, you got to take the calls. You know, you elect to do a job. I know some folks say, "I take my job just a hair too much," but I love the folks, and I love to see folks moving in the right direction and trying to move in the right direction. The jobs, we're working on that, and I appreciate what Ms. Miles said. I agree with her 150% what she has said, and that we all have to work together to fix this problem. Just don't take the old way of doing it. We got to bring a new way then. If it's not working the old way, let's do a new way. And I just hope every city council think about that when they come with their New Year resolution. Just put on their mind, but we need to join as one by the hip, you know, and we got to do that. On Mr. Houston here, I was reading some of it. I'm gonna meet with Chief, go over with Chief, look over some things here. That's a part of our mediation team that we're trying to put together. We look at some of the points there. You know, I know our citizen review committees, it seems like they don't meet no more. So these are some of the things I'm working on, they're trying to work on the fix. And so I will be meeting with him on some of these things here. And we talk with him about it and make a decision, should we put this in a committee? But that's what we need to do right now. And because I've been getting a lot of calls on a lot of things there. They're not on this side of town, you know. So I've been getting around a lot now, late at night, driving around, seeing what's going on. It takes that. And I got to apologize to my wife. Last 3 nights I had to do that, you know, because all the calls I'm getting to the house. So, but it's not bothering me, folks. We'll be out and about, getting things on my view and seeing how things go. Because there's always 2 sides to a story. You know, we see different sides, you know. But I'm hoping and praying that we can all get a New Year resolution, that we come together. We come together, guys. It's very, very important. I don't call this a 2014 a good year in Lima, Ohio. It's pretty bad. We had murders. We had division. We're still having division. It was bad, you know, and we still got work to do. And we can do it, guys. We can do it, you know, but it's going to take all of us in this room to work together to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Mrs. Miles?
As I end my first year on city council here, I want to say, wow, it's been a ride, you know. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to not only serve in the 7th Ward, but grateful for the opportunity to serve in the community in which I love. I would have to say I was even honored to chair the chicken committee. You know, that would be a legacy that I would never be able to outlive. No, I'm not pulling that out. I still, to this day, get people on the street who remember me as being the chair of the chicken committee. So, my Lord had a good reason, had a good sense of humor when he made that my first committee chair. So I will be remembered in Lima. If I ever pass away, they'll probably be on my tombstone, the chicken lady. Yeah. So grateful for the opportunity. I want to thank my fellow council members who helped me this year. I mean, each one have in their own way helped me with learning the ropes, learning the protocol, the procedures, and I am forever grateful to each one of you for being there to assist me in my first year. I want to say, you know, that we, like Councilman Glenn says, that we have to come together as one body, as one mind, and be unified. It is the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish some of the goals that, some of the headaches, some of the problems that we have in this community. We all have to be focused on it. Have one vision and stay focused on that vision. But it's going to take unity. And unity doesn't mean that we all have to think alike. Unity means that we're all oneness of mind, that we're all focused in the same direction. So it is my hope for this new year that we will try to come together as council members, as administration, and not have the us versus them mentality, but that we work together, because there are many things in our city that we have the power to change, but we have to have unity in order for it to accomplish. And lastly, I just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone. As I mentioned last week here, during this holiday season, take the time to enjoy the happiness and the joy that comes with this season. I mean, there is so much, you know, that we have to be thankful for, but sometimes we have to really sit still and just think about how blessed we are. And so I hope that during this downtime of this Christmas season, that we take the time to truly, truly count our blessings and to truly try to, like Councilor Gordon says, be good to someone. You know, the good that we do to each other will come back to us 3, 4, 5 folds. So with that, I say Merry Christmas to everyone, and I'm looking forward to a great, prosperous new year.
Thank you, Mrs. Miles. I certainly want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. I guess in the precedent set by former council member David Adams, I've got a bit of a poem I'm going to read here at the end of the meeting. And I've read parts of this before. It's actually lyrics to a song by a rather popular group called the Goo Goo Dolls. The name of the song is Better Days, and it was actually written in the aftermath as a fundraiser for the Hurricane Katrina when it hit New Orleans. But if you listen to the words, I find it to be one of the most appropriate and powerful Christmas songs, even though it was never intended, nor is it ever played as a Christmas song. So if you'll indulge me, I'm reading it, not singing it. And you ask me what I want this year, and I'll try to make this kind and clear. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. 'Cause I don't need boxes wrapped in strings and designer love and empty things. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. I need someplace simple where we could live and something only you can give, and that's faith and trust and peace while we're alive. And the one poor child who saved this world, and there's 10 million more who probably could if we'd all just stopped and said a prayer for them. I wish everyone was loved tonight and somehow stop this endless fight. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. So take these words and sing out loud, because everyone is forgiven now. Because tonight's the night the world begins again. Merry Christmas.